Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another review for you, and that is for Bloodborne, The Healing Thirst by Alice Cott and illustrated by Brad Simpson and Peter Kowalski. I don't know if I'm saying those names all completely correctly, but those are people who worked on it. This is the second Bloodborne graphic novel. And the second one that I've read. I'm a big fan of Bloodborne, the video game, and I also really enjoyed, I think a couple months ago now, I read the first graphic novel, The Death of Sleep. I really enjoyed that one. If you're interested in my review for that, you can see it on the channel. So I was really excited to read this second graphic novel. I didn't get to it as soon as I hoped I would, but I was able to read it. And earlier today, I read this today, and earlier today I was finding myself playing some Bloodborne again, and so I felt kind of in the mood for it. So I read it, and I would say I enjoyed this graphic novel even more than the first one. I really enjoyed this. I loved it. There's a lot of things I really enjoyed about it, so I'll get into those. First of all, the main thing, with something like a graphic novel or a comic book is, of course, the artwork, which is not something that I'm going to talk about all that much because this is more a book review type thing. So I'm going to talk more about the story. But the artwork was really, really good. I may throw some examples of it up on the screen if I remember to. But the artwork, as is in the first graphic novel, is excellent. Really kind of different vibe to the artwork. The first graphic novel, of course, the events and everything that it's depicting are different. The first one had a lot more action, especially kind of in the first half of it. Had a lot of action, a lot of kind of long landscape shots, a lot of kind of a sense of like a very kind of lonely, dark atmosphere to it. Whereas this one still has that darkness, but it is a lot more interior spaces, a lot more close-ups on characters, not as much action and violence. There's some kind of gruesome imagery here and there, but it's not like as overt, I guess, as the first graphic novel was. The style of it's a little different, which I appreciated, and I enjoyed that about it. And the art itself is generally really, really good. I also, as far as the actual content of the graphic novel in terms of story, I really liked the story this was telling. Kind of similar to the first graphic novel, this does appear to be a prequel to the video game, whereas that one was about more focusing on the hunters, with one hunter in particular. This one is less about the hunters. The hunters are still involved, but this one focuses on a priest of the Healing Church, as well as just a civilian who happens to tinker in some science here and there, which is something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed getting this different perspective. This is something that you don't get a lot of perspective of in Bloodborne. Of course, the first graphic novel was very much the hunter perspective, which is very similar to what you get in the video game. So this provided something a little bit different, a little bit unique, which I really enjoyed, and also allowed it to tell a really interesting story where, of course, within the setting of Bloodborne, you have the Healing Church, which is giving out this healing blood through blood ministration, which essentially, by the time of the video game, you learn that this blood had properties to it that had negative effects on people, which involved turning them basically into monsters. And the Healing Church would try to cover that up. They would send out their hunters to go and kill the beasts, but then the hunters would themselves take in the blood and turn it into beasts themselves, and it was just this whole cycle of violence and everything. So this very much is about kind of the beginnings of that and the kind of discovery of that in a way, where you have this priest and this kind of civilian scientist person who are both kind of thinking something is up with all of this. Like this blood is being given out, and we're having this beast plague and everything. Maybe there's a connection between these two things and all this stuff. And I really enjoyed that about it. I really enjoyed kind of getting to see these two people kind of in the earlier days of the setting, kind of when things started to kind of go a little bit wrong within Yharnam, the city of Bloodborne, and getting to see kind of the early days of that story, getting to see these two characters who, by the time of the game are probably long gone, these characters who we're kind of first kind of looking into all of this stuff. I just thought that was really interesting. It also presented some interesting kind of theme work with this, some interesting themes about the role of religion, things about, the role of, people kind of trying to dig deeper and trying to discover things, trying to figure out the root of problems, sometimes even relating to the theme of religion of it even gets brought up in the graphic novel that, the healing church is not necessarily an entirely bad thing, but because they are doing this thing which is inadvertently causing a problem, that is what needs to be stopped. But at this point, it's kind of too late. And so I really enjoyed kind of the themes surrounding that stuff and the themes surrounding, this priest who is kind of losing faith in the church because they're discovering these things that are happening, and this kind of civilian scientist person who is also kind of using this discovery to his own ends in order to try to do something with that knowledge. And I just enjoyed all of those aspects about this story as well. I also appreciate the ending. I have a couple issues with the ending, so that's kind of getting into the negative, so I'll just talk about that all right now, because this is really the last thing I have to talk about with this graphic novel, which is the ending. I like the ending because, much like the ending of the first graphic novel, and much like kind of the vibe of Bloodborne in general, it leaves a lot up to interpretation. It ends basically on a cliffhanger, and and it's possible that it may be continued in another graphic novel, because it does say, I think at the end, like the end of the story for now or something to that effect. So it's possible this may get picked up later on, but it very much ends in like a way where it's like this thing happens, and it's very much like a cliffhanger type ending, where it's very much left up to interpretation of the reader as to what just happened and what is going to happen. And I like that because it's very on theme for Bloodborne. What I don't like is, first of all, it feels a little unsatisfying because it does kind of cut off, but also I felt like it was setting something else up that didn't happen. And for this, I'm going to have to get a little bit technical into the lore of Bloodborne. This won't be spoiling this graphic novel or anything, but for those of you who have played Bloodborne, you may be aware of some of these things, or if you haven't, then this is kind of where I was coming from with this. There's a lot in this graphic novel, especially in the artwork, kind of foreshadowing the blood moon. And within Bloodborne, one of the things that the blood moon signifies, the red moon, is when the moon becomes red, then a woman may become pregnant with essentially a child of a great one, god person thing. And I felt like that was being set up in this graphic novel. That's not the direction that the ending took. I kind of wish it had. It took a different direction, which was still interesting and still, a decent ending. But I was kind of hoping it would kind of go more in that direction. So that is something that, was a little bit of more kind of something that I felt like was being foreshadowed and not followed through on. Maybe I was just looking into, I was seeing something that wasn't actually, meant to be there. I don't know. That's just how I felt. That was my interpretation. Of course, Bloodborne is a very interpretive thing. That was just my interpretation of what was being presented in the graphic novel. So I thought it was going that direction. Turns out it wasn't. So I was a little bit annoyed about that, but in the end, it was still a fine enough ending. So that pretty much wraps up my review. Overall, I did really enjoy this graphic novel. Even that little issue with the ending aside, I still absolutely loved it. I had an amazing time reading it. I thought it was really interestingly written. The writing of it was, in the first graphic novel was very much, the images and the text bubbles. Whereas this has a lot of like letters and notes and things. It was really cool. It was really interesting. You get to get in the heads of the characters a lot more and kind of get a lot more kind of setting building in it, which I really liked. It was just overall really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. As far as a rating out of 10 that I'd give this, I'd actually give this a 10 out of 10. I really love this graphic novel. As a fan of Bloodborne, it was very interesting and satisfying to me, but also as its own experience, I think it was really interesting, and it did kind of what I wanted the Bloodborne graphic novels to do when I started reading the first one, which that one also did do in some ways, which is to take the lore and the story of Bloodborne and really do something interesting with it and really expand on it, really tell these interesting stories set in the backstory of Bloodborne, and really kind of get into that stuff, because that stuff is really interesting to me. And so that this kind of checked all the boxes for me. So I really enjoyed this graphic novel. High recommendation from me, especially if you're a fan of the video game. So that pretty much is a wrap up on this review. Let me know in the comments if you have read Bloodborne, The Healing Thirst, and if so, what you thought of it. If you've read the other graphic novels, let me know what you think of this one in comparison. Is this your favorite of them? Is this not as good to you? Let me know in the comments. I do intend to be reading the third one very soon, and as soon as I can get my hands on 4 through 6, I believe a box set for that is coming out later this year. So I will try to get my hands on that sometime. Looking forward to reading all of those other graphic novels, because so far the 2 that I have read I've really enjoyed. So that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.